I guess we'll call the meeting to order.
The streaming is recording.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Okay, the first item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. So could I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Motion, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Seconded by Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Can you call the vote, Karen, please?
Yes, Eric,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Councillor Bratney,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
and Kathy.
Yes.
That's carried by 5, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The next item on our list is disclosure of interest. Does anybody have anything they need to disclose during the meeting?
Not at this time.
Okay. Okay, so I guess that's a no from everyone. The next item is the approval of our February 23rd minutes. I reviewed them and I didn't see anything untoward. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to add?
I don't know whether it matters or not, but the nomination, who made the nomination for the Madam Chair? I know it does state that there was a motion, but there was also a nomination there. So
Okay, 1 second, I'll go back and
not.
have a look. Joe and I did our oaths, appointment of a chair. It says it was moved by Councillor Bratney and seconded by,
and that was the
oh,
nomination, but there was no
that's right.
nomination mentioned.
You're right, Eric. Yeah, I think it should have said that nominated by you
Yes.
and then Jean and Ken. Thanks for pointing that out.
Madam Chair, if I may, typically we don't identify who the nomination is because
Oh, okay.
it's the motion that carries it. We do the same thing with council.
Okay, perfect. Thank
All right.
you. See, we learn as we go.
That's
Yes.
right.
Okay, can I get a motion to accept the minutes as they are then?
I'll make that motion.
And a seconder, please?
I'll second it, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Was that Ken?
Yes, it was.
Okay. All right. So Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Councillor Bratney,
Yes.
and Kathy.
Yes,
That's carried by 5, Madam Chair.
thank you. Okay, we will now move on to our reports. And I think that Inspector Martin is going to introduce us to somebody.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. Yes, this morning we have Chief Superintendent Dwight here. The chief is the regional commander for Central Region, in which Northumberland is part of. And the chief's been our boss, our regional boss, since February of last year. And I know the chief can probably do a little better job than I am as far as picking it up from there. And we're lucky to have the chief for a few minutes this morning just to pass along his greetings to the board.
Thank you, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks, Jeff, for the intro, and Madam Chair, thanks very much. And I'm very happy to have a few moments on your agenda. I know you have business to deliberate on, so I'll try to keep my comments brief, but I really, I wanted to take an opportunity to introduce myself, and I'm sorry, clearly, I don't think any of us thought COVID would perhaps be going on as long as it has been. It's been made it difficult, certainly from time to time, to get out. But this is, the technology makes it a little bit easier for us to get out and see everybody. So I did want to take some time to introduce myself to you. Just so if you happen to hear my name from Jeff as he's interacting with you on a regular basis and conducting business, then you could at least put a face to the name. Dwight Pierre is my name, and yes, very fortunate indeed to be the chief of Central Region. It's a really wonderful command, and obviously we have a fantastic opportunity to police in a beautiful part of our province. Our region extends from Caledon all the way out to Brighton and up to Collingwood and over to Huntsville. A couple of so a fairly significant area directly north of north and west of the GTA, which is all the more significant in these COVID times to our policing jurisdiction, of course. We recently, and you may be aware, that we have taken over policing service in the town of Orangeville, and as of February in the town of Shelburne as well. So that's fairly significant for our region. There are two quite large areas in Dufferin County. So we now are policing all areas in Dufferin County. So now we can put our border out to the west all the way to Grand Valley, actually. So it's a significant area, and Central Region is experiencing some unprecedented growth. We clearly have a bit of a migration out from the GTA into our area. So we've got a lot of housing development, a lot of people moving out that are new to our communities. Certainly, a little bit of background as far as I go. I'm a 32-year veteran of the OPP. I started my policing service over in the town of Petrolia in Lambton County, and I worked there. I worked over in Middlesex County in the town of Lucan as well, just north of London. And I spent a considerable time in southwestern Ontario, particularly up in the Goderich area, which was a wonderful experience for me working up in Huron County, lovely area as well. And I've sort of moved around. Our command in the West region our headquarters is out of London. And I was fortunate in 2016 to be transferred up to Central Region as a superintendent, where I started my work at Central Region headquarters. I was only here for a brief period of time before they made me the chief firearms officer for the province. And I went over there, which was an interesting experience working in that regulatory field. And certainly firearms is a real area of interest for many Ontarians. And I learned a lot in that role. So I was fortunate to come from the CFO over back to Central Region and assume command here. So as Jeff says, Northumberland is certainly a big part of our Central Region family. A very interesting area there with the three separate locations, very diverse area. And certainly with the 401 coming through, no doubt lots of issues on that stretch, certainly impacted on by weather conditions annually. And I do think Jeff, very fortunate to have him as the commander. I think it was a great selection there, and he's no doubt very familiar with Northumberland, and I believe he's providing some excellent leadership there for all of our people. Very happy as well to get Mario Royer on side as an ops manager. He comes to us with a lot of experience. He's sort of returning as well, which is always a nice thing for us to see people coming back to the area because they have a certain appreciation for it, but they bring with them the experience from conducting their duties elsewhere in the province, and they bring that and they're able to share that with our members. So I don't have to tell you, there's been some significant incidents lately in Northumberland that have impacted the community and impacted on our officers. And the OPP has taken a lot of steps with respect to our healthy workplace approach. We now have psychologists on staff. We have, they're called care navigators. They're members that are able to help our officers in times of crisis navigate, get the supports, get directly to the supports that they require. And in the wake of a critical incident most recently with an officer-involved shooting, we did deploy those resources to support our members. And I know that Jeff was a big part of making sure things rolled there, and that our members were supported. And I know he continues to support them in the wake of that incident. So things are a little bit different than they were. Certainly when I started, we didn't have any of that type of thing. So I'm very happy to see that we are able to provide, I think, appropriate levels of support to our members. You know, and this is a positive step for policing in general. I will say as well, we are experiencing a number of challenges during COVID. I think we're all familiar with seeing on the news nightly various protests, and these are happening throughout our jurisdictions, throughout Central Region. We're seeing, we actually have seen from the get-go protests in some of our communities on a weekly basis, and it's sort of set up this kind of rolling protest. And it may be anti-masking. We had some various protests that related to, you know, either government or in fact policing. Obviously last March, that was a very salient issue with BLM protests going on, and they've moved along this kind of continuum as people remain, I think, or continue to be somewhat frustrated as we move through COVID. So our officers are really trying their best to balance that approach where we are mindful of keeping the peace, mindful of making sure nobody is hurt, and also you know, if there are issues where we have to hold people accountable, either attending gatherings or in the organizing of gatherings, then we're collecting the information that allows us to make those decisions and follow through with enforcement if that is appropriate. So these are, as they are for everybody, unprecedented times. They are quite challenging for the policing community. I think our people have generally, they've kept good composure. They've been patient. They've tried their best to understand what's required of us as things have kind of moved and shifted through pandemic. We are all hopeful that the vaccinations continue to roll out and that we have proper supply, and that helps our society in general get to a point where we can all be as safe as possible. So the backdrop of that is traffic safety, crimes of violence, certainly drug trafficking, human trafficking. These things have all continued, and they have not taken a break through pandemic. So our officers have been out there continuing to enforce, and we're going to, you know, we're going to stay that course. We're going to continue to do that. I hear some new, they're looking at some new stunt driving racing legislation coming in, some higher fines and some higher different provisions for suspension that may help us in the long run, because who would have known that when we get into COVID, all of a sudden everybody wants to drive their cars as fast as they can on the highways. It was, I don't think we would have ever necessarily predicted that, but it seems like fewer vehicles on the highways, it looked a lot more like a raceway, and some people took advantage of that, and we've seen a real uptick in that. So those are, I wanted to as well just touch on the fact we are housed at our Central Region headquarters is in Aurelia, and I want to emphasize the primary purpose of our command is to support our field offices, which are our detachments in our communities. And I have two superintendents that help me with the command of the region. We have it divided kind of east and west as far as our detachment locations, and each superintendent looks after half of the region. Superintendent Bradley McCallum is our superintendent for Northumberland, and he directly supports Jeff with any challenges that he has. And Jim Smith is our other superintendent, and he supports the detachments kind of aligned from Caledon up to South Georgian Bay. We also at headquarters have crime. We have a criminal operations complement that supports detachments with major crime investigations. They supervise the detective sergeants that take care of major crime issues, and manage our local crime unit. We also have emergency response personnel. These are the ERT members. You may have heard of them or seen them in the news. They're involved with certainly tactical approaches when we do search warrants. They support on those, but they also are greatly involved in search and rescue, which again, through this pandemic has been something we've seen a real need for, as we have people enjoying trails and doing a lot of hiking in areas they may not be familiar with. And of course, they come up to our jurisdiction to enjoy those things. And we've had to deploy ERT on a number of occasions to find people and make sure we can get them back safely from the bush. We also have traffic services here, which is it's our regional traffic complement. A lot of them are very much experts in what they do. They're our reconstructionists, so they sort of forensically put a crash scene back together, and they work through the evidence with the investigators, and they give them that kind of scientific approach to what happened with that collision. So we offer a number of supports, but it's all aimed at helping the detachment do their complete their mission in the field of providing community safety in the communities. And that's what we have to offer, and that's what we're about at Central Region Headquarters. I don't know if you've been up to our headquarters, but as we move through this and we have more time, I certainly welcome you to come up. I'd love to sit down and have a coffee with you and show you around our operations here. We have our communication center is actually on the upper floor of this building. So our dispatchers and our call takers who look after all of our officers throughout Central Region, as well as our HSD members all the way down to the Niagara Peninsula. All of that dispatch activity takes place out of this building. So if you haven't seen our communication center, I think you'd really be impressed with what that looks like, and you'd be able to get to see the console that's dispatching to our Northumberland detachments, and it's quite. They do an incredible job. Our dispatchers are just they're quite a phenomenal group. But I will leave it there. I wanted you to know who we were, who I am, and the fact that we're here to support the mission of Northumberland Detachment, and in with whatever they need to make things as put things in the best possible positions for our officers out there in the field in Northumberland. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Some of us have actually visited the Aurelia building, and those of us who did found it fascinating that there's so much going on, and that the OPP is responsible for so many different things. Eric, I think you really enjoyed the trip.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you were able to see the building. It's a broad mission, but just like I started my policing in small town Ontario, that's really what the OPP is about. We do the large things. We get called upon to do very large things, large scale things, investigations, searches, and otherwise. But really, the officers in the community engaging, knowing what's going on, knowing the people in the community, that's really what it's about. And that's the fundamental aspect of policing that we really want to be focusing on and making sure we're getting right. So I wish you all the best. I know you're deliberating on the detachment boards, and this is some new legislation that everybody's dealing with, and I hope that's going well. I think that you may be a little bit ahead of the curve out there in Northumberland, so that's really good to hear. And I know, as I have all confidence that Jeff can certainly help with any guidance and advice on all of those issues.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I have a motion to receive the verbal information that we just received from Chief Superintendent Peer?
So move, Kathy.
Okay, Jean
Yes.
and Eric?
That'd be,
Karen, can you call the vote?
Counselor Bratney,
yes,
Counselor Tully,
yes,
Eric,
Yes.
Joe? Oh, you're muted, Joe.
Okay, okay, yes.
And
Don't know how
Kathy.
that happened.
Yes,
That's carried by 5, Madam Chair.
thank you. And
Kathy,
Jeff,
go
I
ahead.
wanted, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Back when the Brillia building was constructed, Milton Saltern was the architect, who was one of the companies involved in it. And he had done quite a few buildings for school boards, and I got to personally know him. And he invited me to tour the building on the day before they turned the building over to the OPPs.
Wow.
And unfortunately, I couldn't go, and unfortunately, I couldn't go. We had the tour either, so I've regretted both of those invitations to see the building. But certainly, Milton, we had a great on the school boards. We had a lot of confidence in his expertise and how he designed things, and I'm sure it shows up in the building he did do there too. So, thank
Oh,
you.
that was too bad, but I'm sure once we're through COVID, that Jeff will be able to arrange something for those of us on the board that have not had the opportunity to see the building, because it really is worth going to see. We had a
That'd be good.
terrific day. Okay, well, Jeff, thank you very much for inviting your boss. The last time I saw him, I think, was at your selection board interview.
Yes, and thank you for giving the chief a few minutes this morning.
Perfect. Okay, now the next thing on the agenda is our reports. So, Jeff, if you want to take over for a little while.
Certainly will. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody. So this report, just keep in mind that these are for the data and the information I'm sharing is for combined February and March of this year. So to start off, public complaint wise, that's encompassing policy, service, and conduct. There is one service complaint that was submitted to the OIRPD that's being looked at currently. I'm aware of the circumstances of the complaint and have no concerns. Secondary employment of our officers remains at 2. Daily activity reporting patrol hours, number of cruiser patrol hours is 1,121 and a quarter for the 2 months. Snowmobile patrol hours, we have 1.5 in that time. Foot patrol hours, 108.5, and school patrol hours 1. I'd like to give us staffing updates whenever we can, just to keep the boards in the loop as far as our members coming and going and opportunities that they're having. So in first week of February, we welcomed PC Graydon Maynard. Graydon has been an auxiliary with us for 2 years, terrific auxiliary member, Brighton family, just a real nice young lad. He successfully graduated the OPP Academy, 4 months between OPC and the Academy. So Graydon hit the field in the first week of February, and he works out of the Brighton office. As a reminder, we accepted 4 recruit constables in October of last year. And for the board's information, we have 6 more recruit constables that will be coming in the first week of June. And 3 of those will be working out of the Campbellford site. So that's exciting, always exciting getting new officers coming in. Recruits always come with that, certainly that added level of excitement and energy at the start of an exciting career. So we're really happy to welcome them. We have all of our recruiting, our coaching officers all set up. A recruit is with a coach for a 1-year probationary period. Many evaluations of performance and their field duty. And at the end of that 1-year probationary period, then a determination is made and recommendation to keep that probationary constable on staff or not is made. Various detachment initiatives, just a little piece from corporate OPP about number of lives saved provincially through the administration of naloxone by our officers. crime and traffic initiatives. We had 75 ride programs throughout the county in March, and we had 81 rides in February. Public was National Fraud Protection Month. So we all know that the frauds are nonstop online, and whenever they can find something new to defraud members of the public, or even those more so, they go after the more vulnerable members of the public. So quite often locally, we're putting out various tips in that, as do corporate communications. So what we did locally, Rob Simpson is our media officer. I know you've heard his name quite often. Rob produces some pretty high quality videos. So for the month of March, Rob put together a series of 3 videos, sort of Rob Mercer or Mercer style, and did a really great job, delivered the message, and OPP Corporate, they picked up those videos as well, which is another nice feather in the cap for Rob, because that went, his messaging and videos went provincially as well. And just another piece we included about seizure of stolen vehicles along the 401. That trend continues of higher end vehicles being stolen in the greater GTA area and taken to ports. The Montreal port is to ship them overseas. So obviously there's a lot of money to be made in those transactions. So we continue to see that. And at times we do have opportunity to intersect those vehicles. In this case, it was vehicles, I believe there was 3 or 4 of them that were packed into one tractor trailer. So charges related in that case. Moving on to the statistics.
Jeff, I just have a question. In the case of that type of vehicle theft, is it the truck driver that gets charged?
It depends. In this case, he was claiming not to have knowledge of what his load was.
Yeah.
Because as you might know, with the trailers, they can be secure, they're tagged. In this case, he claimed that there was, he didn't know what his load was. At the same time, all truck carriers are expected to have their bill of lading with knowledge of what they're transporting. So in this case, at the time of the report, I'm not sure if it's in our matters of interest or not. At the time, he wasn't being charged, but I'm told that he did end up being charged.
I just wondered.
Yeah, depending on the circumstances, but really kind of hard to believe that you're pulling a load and you're not quite know what's inside it. Okay, on to our statistical portion of the February-March report. Motor vehicle collisions, first off. So 119 collisions, and that's countywide for both March and February. 93 were property damage only, 25 were personal injury, and 1 was a fatal motor vehicle collision. The next 2 pages should be our broader motor vehicle collision templates. It breaks down those collisions into the various municipalities, the 401. So for February, for Trent Hills, total 12 motor vehicle collisions. 8 of those are property damage and 4 involve personal injury. So that brought your year-to-date total to 18 for February. And now for March, 14 collisions in March, 12 are property damage, 2 involve injuries, and that brought your year-to-date to 32. Moving on to the violent crime portion. 13 occurrences of violent crime for February and March. Comparatively for the same time last year was 11. So we had 1 sexual assault, 6 assaults, 1 abduction where charges were laid, and that had to do with a domestic disturbance, and a male was charged with forcible confinement and assault. Domestic related victim services were offered to the victim and accepted. And then there were 5 other crimes against person, bringing the total to 13. Property crime was 20 compared to 21 last year, same time of year. 2 break and enters, 1 theft over 5,000, 5 theft under 5,000, 6 frauds, and 6 mischiefs. There was 1 drug crime charge laid, being trafficking, so selling of illicit drugs. Next is our clearance rate page, just speaks to the, at the time of the report anyway, if charges were laid and how cases were cleared, whether they were solved or ongoing. Next portion, significant portion of the report are just our matters of interest for the board's information, various stories and calls for service across the county. In my package here, it shows March 1st anyway, hopefully the same for you. Total number of calls of service in Trent Hills for March was 294, and 3 of those were calls for service related to COVID non-compliance legislation.
Jeff, may I interrupt you here at the moment?
Certainly.
May I ask Jeff the question? Hello?
Please
Okay.
do.
Okay, being very familiar with statistics, it's been a long time, but I see where the patrol hours in Trent Hills is 1,121.25. This seems like a very small number of patrol hours to Trent Hill. And when I looked at the accidents, we seem to have more accidents than some of the other areas, some of the other municipalities. And even one, I think it was February, where we had more accidents than they had on 401. Now, I don't know, I did hear that we are only paying for a small number of patrol hours. Is that right? Or is that just what you allocate, your supervisors allocate to the municipalities?
Yeah, so to speak to the patrol hours, Joe, patrol hours, like for a contract, there is no such breakdown to you get so many patrol hours. I'll talk a little bit about the Police Service Board report template. And I can tell you this template was updated about 8 or 9 years ago. It didn't come, it's a creation of business management group corporately in the OPP. I know overall detached commanders that have contracts and report to boards. I'm one of them. I'm not satisfied with these reports as far as how they're set up now. And one of the reasons is just that, what you pointed out, Joe. On the first page, smack dab in the middle shows the number of cruiser patrol hours. And I think visually, sometimes that can be misleading to how much the OPP is in the community. So every officer every day, Joe, does a DAR, daily activity report. So just like the old activity sheets, days gone by, you put in exactly what you're doing. And there are hundreds of codes for DAR, depending on what the officer is doing. That cruiser patrol, that is only one code of the hundreds of what the officers are doing that day. So I think it is a little bit of a misrepresentation of the officers in the community. So as you know, you could have a black and white in Camelford and Warkworth and Hastings, and they're conducting follow-up or they're driving wherever for a number of hundreds of different reasons. But they could be doing follow-up on a domestic, on a theft, whatever they're doing. And you know, we all know as officers are traveling from A and B, they're patrolling. But for their DAR reporting purposes, that hour, an hour and a half, or 2 hours would be scored as a theft follow-up or a domestic follow-up, things like that. So when you see that number of actual cruiser patrol hours, that is when the officer has used that code. I think it's 248 is the code for true proactive cruiser patrol hours where they have nothing else going on at the time. And I can tell you our officers are very busy with those reactive calls for service. So as more reactive calls for service come up, and there can be 100 different reasons, pandemic certainly one of them, you would naturally see the patrol hours coming down because they're busier doing those reactive, and that's how their DARs are being scored to those calls. Quickly, I'll just give you an example that I used with, and I explained this to Port Hope Board last summer. Port Hope Ward 2 is our smallest contract, certainly within the county. We share that municipality with Port Hope Police Service. And there, this very same question was cruiser patrol hours. It was a lot less for July and August that they had previously seen in other months. Time of year factors in, of course, too. It's no secret that June, July, and August. For like most people, it's a favorite time of annual leave for officers. We have certain rules and protocols there, so not everyone's taking time off. But that factors into everybody's patrol hours. If you have more officers not working, you're going to have less available proactive patrol time. But I'm using that example because I spent some time on it, and for that 1 month, there was actually 58 DAR codes registered to patrol to Port Hope. So hundreds into the 1,000 of officer hours, but only that one small segment reflected patrol hours. And that's one of the reasons I don't like it, because for those that aren't experienced and haven't had these conversations with a detached commander or someone else before, I think it can be misleading of how much time we're actually in the community. And this only shows that proactive, nothing else going on, cruising around, crime prevention, things like that. So hopefully that answered your question a little bit on that. And I did ask a question 2 weeks ago of our business management group, and it's related to the ongoing transition to the detachment board. And my question is with, going to 1 or 2 boards, I think there should be a higher accountability and a better report being provided to the boards with better detail. What I delivered to you is actually outside of the lines a little bit. One of the parts today is going to be our quarterly analytical report on collisions and drugs and property crime. The MVC template sheet countywide, none of these are part of the OPP Police Service Board. I provide these over and above because I know that's important to the boards and to the communities. But if it was just going by those business management rules, all I would really be able to provide is that template. So we're really hoping that there's going to be an update to that report, more detailed, and that they consult with the DCs because it should be more consistent in some areas of the province. I think of larger county-wide contracts, Essex, Wellington, they'll have one board and the detached commander might be providing a 60-page report that, lots of colors and graphs, and it looks great. But then in a different area, it might be the same policing responsibility. They're getting an 8 or 10-page report that, really just looks like that, exactly sort of what our business management rules say. So you can see there's an issue there. It should be consistent across the province when you're reporting to boards. So I'm told they're working on that. Realistically, and I know we're going to talk about it later a little bit when we're talking about when new boards are up and going. Hopefully that's giving them enough time and consultation time, hopefully with boards as well, of exactly what the boards are looking for, that they can come up with something a little bit better than what we have right now. But that's the reason that for quite a few years now, we've provided above and beyond more than really we're supposed to, just because we think there are some shortcomings in the existing template. Hopefully yes. I answered everything you were looking for there, Joe.
Yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying there with the daily activity reporting. But the reason I've asked that question is I have a person that has complained to me, and he's complained he made a presentation to the Police Service Board in 2017, and he's never been satisfied as to he's more upset with the municipality than he is with the OPP. But one of the officers said to him that Trent Hills is only paying, I think, for 2 hours a shift or something. And I don't really understand are we with this contract that we have. I've never talked to anybody about it, but I don't know how much Trent Hills is paying for the policing. And that is why we'll discuss it later with the speeding on Trent Drive. But that's the reason for my question. When he come out with 2 hours of patrol time, I thought, man, and then I see 1,121 hours. I thought, they're needed. I think we can solve his problem very easily. I don't think it's a big problem, but I can discuss that with you later, or we'll discuss it under Trent Drive.
Yep. Sounds good. I can tell you quickly though that, yeah, that information that got back to you, Joe, that's just not how it works. As far
Okay,
as municipal policing.
Thanks, Jeff. I think that was a good question on Joe's part because I didn't understand it. So now I have a better understanding as well. Okay, next up on your report.
Yeah, let's see, I think I was at the property crime, drug crime. Sorry, I should have put a little place mark. I was referring back to my front sheets. Matters of interest. I don't think I touched on, I think I was at the March matters of interest, February matters of interest again, just various stories and investigations across the county. 230 calls for service in Trent Hills in February, and only one was a COVID non-compliance call for service. One of the stories from Brighton, you'll see we had a delivery to our Brighton office in the form of a World War II live mortar round, which we certainly discourage.
Yeah.
Live explosives being brought into the detachment. Yeah, open any questions to the matters of interest. Beyond that, our bylaw enforcement false alarm report for March. We responded to 3 false alarms, 2 of which officers attended and weren't called off. And then in February, 6 alarms and 3 locations attended. Next, our Provincial Offense Act charges form. You know, throw that out. This is another example of one that's over and above what the business management group. But really, as long as I've been here anyway, we've been providing this to our boards just as an information of provincial charges that are laid on a monthly. So February in Trent Hills, 53 tickets were issued, and in March, 41. Our auxiliary report. So pandemic's been a rough time for our volunteer auxiliary. For the most part, they've been stood down for that time period. A couple months ago, they were stood back up when provincial numbers were getting down. And as a result, you'll see some of the hours in March. They were part of Easter food drive, very successful, March 20th and 21st in Campbellford, Hastings, and Brighton. And then they're again stood down right now during the lockdown. So they do a lot for us, and the numbers are down right now. So we're doing that recruiting drive and getting some more folks interested. And then that was the March. For February, again, that's reflective in their only 70 hours of volunteer time in February as well. And the last piece, we've included our quarterly analytics. Again, this is a 3-year snapshot of what's going on in those 3 categories that we look at. The first is the motor vehicle collisions. Time period is from January 2018 to December of 2020. So overall, you'll see all collisions by quarter. So for that time period from 2018 to the end of 20, the dotted line shows a slight decrease in MVCs. Despite there was a peak in Q4 of 56, but overall, over that time period, there is a slight decrease. Speaks to 56 motor vehicle collisions in Q4 of 2020 and looks at the primary causes. Usually they don't change very often for Trent Hills. Animals on the road is always a concern farther north. Speed, loss control, and fail to yield is generally a constant for all of our areas as well. The next quarterly report is drug-related occurrences and downward trend for that last the quarter being only 4 occurrences. Now, keep in mind this is a few months ago as well. I can tell you that our Community Street Crime Unit has been very active in the Trent Hills area, specifically over the last few months, related to drug warrants and illicit properties that are trafficking in drugs and everything else that goes with that, firearms and illegal cash as well. What we look at for these analytical reviews is also overdoses as well. And that has become a real plague. Canada-wide, really, the amount of overdoses due to fentanyl has really spiked and has become a real society issue. And the last quarterly is property crime. And again, overall slight downward trend during that 3-year time, 47 total Q4 of last year. And then the final page, page 4 of 4, just breaks down exactly what the property crimes are: vehicle related, theft, mischief, fraud, and break and enters. That concludes my March, February report, Madam Chair, and open to questions.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, on the, Jeff, I know we discussed this some time ago. There is a fee charged for some false reports, some false alarms responses.
Yeah, that's set up through the municipality, Eric. I'm not, each municipality is a little bit different. It's a very, it came in probably about 10 years ago or so. It was very welcome by the OPP anyway, because that offered some immediate deterrence of people getting their systems dialed in properly, and also had some accountability on the security companies as well for doing just that.
I understand. I think it's, I think there has to be some accountability there. You guys would be running around to, you know, all kinds of false alarms. But the those fees charged, does that go to the municipality or does that go into the provincial coffers?
No, nothing to do with us, straight to the municipality.
Okay, that was the question asked of me, and now I have an official response. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I may ask Jeff a question in regards to drugs.
Sure.
Jeff, this is only my second meeting, but I have been concerned. I was glad to hear that you have a street drug unit, and there was one trafficking charge laid February, March. Now, it used to be the possession charge. I guess that is gone by the wayside, or is it, if you get over a certain amount, can you charge with possession? And the other thing that concerns me is when I read that there's 20 grow ops in Trent Hills, and there was a mention of maybe organized crime, and the municipality is going to apparently have 2 legal drug dispensaries coming up in the future. It gives me some concern. And when last year, I think it was last year, there was a murder at Trent River, which was drug related. I think some people from Kingston were charged. And then there was another murder up there. I actually knew the person that was murdered, or not the murderer who committed suicide in Lindsay. But then there was a girl found at Lions Club Beach, and I guess that is a suspected homicide. And then the one we had there a couple of weeks ago over behind the Canadian Tire. And I spoke to a woman over there, and she knew the name of the accused before you people arrested him. And she was talking about all the trafficking that was going on and so on and so forth. And this guy was raising pit bulls. Do you think there is really a drug problem here in Trent Hills?
No, I think there's a drug problem in most. I think there's a drug problem in most communities, Joe. I guess it depends on what scale, what the definition of drug problem is. This board and all of the boards, we've had lots of conversations and meetings specific to the illicit grows in the rural area. And unfortunately, the Health Canada federal regulations just simply aren't there for us to be able to do our job how we want to do it. And when there's an opportunity to make any type of money, never mind the amounts of money, cash that can be made with illicit grows, then that always attracts organized crime. And with the existing legislation, I'm told that it will be improving. we're hopeful that that'll give us more teeth to combat that. But really right now with outdoor grows, with the setup of being licensed for medical grows, and if you're a designated grower, which doesn't take too much to be designated as such, you can stack up to 3 or 4 personal licenses on one property and as their designated grower, and that opens the door for organized crime, abuse, and all types of things. So there's many of those going on throughout the county, throughout your municipality. Our street crime unit did tremendous work last year and had a number of warrants on those properties in Trent Hills last year. Very successful, but very resource draining as well. To the, I know one in particular, 30 officers were involved simply due to the scope of it, the officer safety component of it, because some of those, there's weapons involved, and the amount of people that you're finding on those property, of course, need to be processed safely as well. So yeah, that's going on. The pandemic has made all drug problems worse. People that suffer and truly are addicted to any type of drug, they don't have access. If they were in treatment before or any type of rehabilitation, they simply don't have that person access anymore. Virtual, maybe they don't even have computer access for virtual, so that's adding to overdose deaths and frustrations for them. Also, so supply and demand of all products that are consumables, drugs is part of it. So that adds into it as well. So, every community has some aspect of a drug problem. I know in Trent Hills, I met with our community street crime supervisor yesterday and just briefing on a few things that are going on, and there's always several within the county that are active. And Trent Hills does have a couple of ongoing investigations right now specifically related to drugs.
Is there something that our police services board could prepare, or you could assist us in preparing and sending it to the government as to what your difficulties are in enforcing the drug trafficking? And I don't know, it's just that perhaps we could do something. I really don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I did hear a good thing about the OPP with the chief of Alderville. He apparently gets along very well with you, and and they're really concerned about keeping organized crime out down there. I heard that from a source, so that's a feather in your cap. I don't know whether it was you or the previous detachment commander, but I did hear
I
that.
appreciate that. Yeah, Chief Mowat and I, we speak often, and yeah, he's very passionate leader of his community. Obviously, that's a different kettle of fish up there, right? Because you've got 12 or 14 illegal illicit cannabis shops. So very in-depth issues to tackle, both as a community and as a society as well. So yeah, Dave's he's a great partner for that. Sorry, Joe, you had another question there for me?
Well, I just wonder with this police services board, if there is something that you could help us prepare, or we could prepare. I don't know, I'm out to lunch here, but if there's something that we can send to the government and saying that this is a problem and you're having trouble enforcing it or whatever. I don't know. It's just a thought that I have. I
appreciate the assistance on that. The OAPSB and Dan Besso, Dan's a longtime board member of Hamilton. Dan's the Zone 3, which we're part of Zone 3 of the OAPSB. They've been doing work as the greater OAPSB. I haven't been to one, but I know for the last their 2 annual conventions that's been an agenda item and brought up to the minister and deputy minister as well. It's very well known. Municipalities locally, especially, are doing some great work on it. Trent Hills is progressive, moving on bylaw legislation. Brighton is very proactive, and we've been part of their cannabis working group for almost a year now. What it is because there just isn't enough teeth in the federal existing legislation, that people that are opening these, there's no shortage of cash. So what we've seen over the last 3 years, we can go in after, possibly a month of workup investigation, because judicially what is required to get a search warrant and to be knocking on these doors, we can shut them down. And we've seen within 24 hours, they're up and running again. They have that availability of liquid cash, $50,000 in pockets. They can go and get generators going and whatnot. A little bit promising what came out at the end of last summer was, up until that point, the growers, even though they could be arrested and charged, Health Canada was not suspending their grower's license. So that gave them the ability to open shop back up again. That's changed now. So basically, if police, not just OPP, because it's going on everywhere across Canada, across Ontario, if that happens, then an application can be made to Health Canada to suspend that grower's license immediately. So that helps a little bit. On a bylaw enforcement level, municipalities do have a lot of power that way to enact certain bylaws through fire regulations, through property compliance. Because once you get, a lot of these places, they're using a lot of resources, a lot of water, and they use a lot of electricity. So when there's hydro theft and whatnot, you're getting into that kind of compliance. There's big penalties, financial implications attached to that as well. And then outside of that, there's some regulations available to ministries. AMO, as the greater body, they became more engaged last summer, and they're collectively working with the municipalities. Because that was the problem that I saw before. You had all of the one-off smaller municipalities trying to do some great work, but sort of doing the same thing in different areas. So AMO has taken that up, as I think they should, and speaking and lobbying for all the municipalities, specifically about these illicit grows.
I don't
Thank you.
know if either of our council members can add anything to that about discussions. Yes, Ken.
Yeah, just further to Inspector Jeff, AMO had their meeting, I think it was January, and they spent quite a bit of time on this subject, and they are writing and doing a lot of pressure on the federal government to, one, have licenses revoked, and do a lot more, put some more teeth in it for law people to do something with it. So AMO, and they'll be having another convention in August, virtual, but AMO certainly is heard loud and clear from rural municipalities just what a big problem this is. So there is a lot of work being done in the background, but progress is being made in getting the federal government on board to putting some teeth in the laws they're passing, or even following up and making sure their growers are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So
Great,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Kathy?
Yes, go ahead, Gene.
Kathy, I just want to express my comments. 20 years ago, when I got involved with community policing, and at that time, Joe Watson was the liaison from council to that group. And I got quite involved with the DARE program, and the meat and potatoes of the DARE program was the stress that marijuana was the gateway to future drug cult. And then how disappointing it was that the federal government now has just washed their hands of pushing any marijuana legislation. And now we got the wide open 20 grow ops sprung up, and then 50 people are charged or found, but nothing really is going to happen to them. And it just destroys the whole concept of what DARE was all about. And now it's no longer part of community policing has gone by the wayside anyway. But the gist of it was that instill in those children in grade 6 that drugs are not the way to start your life. And that seems to be lost on the federal people now. And they've just taken a casual approach to it. And of course, now we got the fentanyl and the opioid deaths climbing at an alarming rate. And they wonder why. Well, I think it's on their lap that they've opened the door.
Yeah, if I could just interject there, Kathy, going back when I was detective, I was really tough on people with simple possession. And when Peterborough Examiner put out the Peterborough Police Force drug charges for the year, little old me here in Campbellford laid more drug charges in the whole city of Peterborough.
Wow.
Anyway, that's going back a few years.
Yes, yeah. Well, I'm afraid we can't do much about the existing legislation. We just have to clean up the mess that it has left us in. And I do think that our Northumberland OPP do a heck of a job because it's ongoing. It's not going to go away. But thank goodness we have the ability to at least have drones in the air to find some of these things. And it's just going to continue to use the resources that are available.
I agree with that, but it would be nice if we could send something to the government as to our concerns. Or
I don't think that's necessary, Joe. I think it's being done through AMO with the municipalities sending very strong comments through that organization, which has a whole lot more teeth than our little police services board here in Trent Hills.
very familiar with AMO.
There you go. Okay, not sure where we are.
We're just finished the false alarm report. So finished up 5B. And we need, if you're finished, Inspector Martin, then we'll need to have a mover and seconder for that motion. Kathy.
I am.
I'll move the report.
Can I second it? I don't know.
I can second it.
Okay, thanks, Joe. And Karen, call the vote, please.
Yeah, Eric,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Counselor Bratney,
Yes.
Counselor Tully,
Yes.
and Kathy.
Yes.
That's carried by 5, Madam Chair.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. Now we're going to go on to the Black Cat reports. First one is Smith Road.
Kathy, I'm just flipping screens here so I can see both on my screen.
I don't even know where Smith Road is, I'm afraid.
The half of Godolphin.
Oh, if you turn to the right.
Cross 35,
Yes.
that becomes Smith Road.
Yeah, I know exactly, yeah. I just forgot.
Okay, yeah, so for Smith Road, municipal staff, it looks like in this case, sometimes municipal staff deploy it, sometimes we do. Every municipality is a little bit different. Andrews and Neil are very proactive in Trent Hills, which is great, and then they pass along these once downloaded to Mark Collins, our traffic sergeant. So in this case, it was a posted 50 km/h zone. Enforcement tolerance was set at 15, which is what we use, is the 15. We think that's far more realistic than 10 or 5 kilometers over. So in this case, March 27th to April 1st, and the results are in the lower, looking at the scale there. There is a small enforcement issue going on there. Of course, more in the green at the baseline is less of an issue with speeding. So each one of these we track. We don't, we hold on to these. In many areas, they repeat themselves. So, and that's something that we don't mind doing. If we're deploying black cats, we'll go back to a spot a couple times of a year because we know that you could have a particular resident that's not too happy with what they perceive as speeding. And for what it's worth, it's not a lot for us to set up a black cat and just, again, have those conversations or have a coffee with the complainant and show them and share with them the results. There's no secret to these things. We like to share with as many people, including the media, if they ask as well. On Trent Drive, it looks like that was put up by Neil on March 16th to the 25th. That's a 40 zone. So the enforcement tolerance was set at only 10 over. Again, that's discretionary, set by whoever the installer is. Again, we like to see 15. And you know, realistically, if are we stopping a car at 50 kilometers, doing 50 and a 40 and giving them a ticket, I would say it's always officer's discretion at the time at the side of the road. But I don't think that's too realistic that somebody's going to be getting a ticket for 10 over. So that's why we generally set it 15 over. And in that case, you would see that arrow, which is, you know, high in the green area. You would see that significantly less into the green. And it looks like the third report, April 9th to April 20th, set up by Neil on Myers Island Road. Again, 50, tolerance was only 10, and it's quite low in that enforceable violation scale as well. So again, these are all areas we receive them from Neil and Andrew, and we keep them in our own our traffic data files, and that's something that how we deploy our officers and our traffic officers as well is really by priority. Look at spots that are, you know, people are being more vocal about, or we receive, or the municipalities receive more concerns about, then that's how we deploy our resources. Obviously, if there's some arrows in the red or the yellow, they take priority. Red generally means black and whites are coming in with radar. We're going to spend some time there, and there's going to be lots of tickets. Red tells me that there's some significant driver behaviors that need to be changed. Luckily, we don't see those very often, but sometimes they do occur. And that will be an example of some hot spots. Trent Hills has a couple, every municipality has a couple, that just due to the design or engineering of the road or the setup or other variables, we know that they're going to be, you know, for the life of the road and the setup, residential setup, that they're going to continue to be speeding complaints as long as it exists for whatever reason. You see that in new developed areas too, as new houses go up, people are commuting outside of the area. So we see speeding concerns come. Grafton's going through that right now because as subdivisions go up, roads that were seldom traveled before are now commuting routes. So complaints come in like that. That's all I have for that. I just want to let the board know that these three, we keep them on file. We don't forget about them. And even though they're showing green, we hold on to those because if that complainant comes back again, again, we don't mind working with Andrew and Neil. We can deploy those again and see if there has been a change. Just because they're green in one part of the year doesn't mean that they'll always be green. We look at that seasonal changes as well.
Kathy.
Oh, sorry,
Kathy,
Ken had a question.
I need to jump in here because we have a complaint on Trent Drive, and he made a presentation to, I guess he's been complaining forever. He made a presentation to the board on November the 28th, 2017.
Yes, he did. And it was at the time, we were told that he should not have made a presentation to the board. But at that particular time, the chair of the board didn't realize that. So he did in fact make the presentation, and Ken was there, I believe, and Jean.
Well, let me just, I live over here. I live just off Trent Drive, and it never really was a big concern to me. But in speaking to the people, I don't know whether, Jeff, are you familiar with Trent Drive?
Oh, you're muted.
You're muted, Jeff.
Sorry. Generally, Joe, yeah, I've been on it.
Have you? Well, it's the same people day after day. And the reason is that they use it as a shortcut to avoid the congestion on the bridge in Campbellford. And the county, 2 years ago, I complained to them because you couldn't make a left-hand turn onto the bridge because it was full all the time for southbound traffic. But when they redid the road here, it's like a straightaway, good road. And Hector McMillan Jr. was the mayor at the time, and I believe he was responsible for it. But we did have radar. I don't know, this is going back 4 years or 5 years, I don't know how long. But there was radar being ran. And there hasn't been anything in the last few years. And I think if we could get radar, like when they're on their patrol, stop and run radar. I spoke to one officer out here at the corner of my road, Parkview Boulevard, and he was running radar and he said, this is a fishing hole. But I haven't seen him back in a long time. Another officer, he was very sharp. He backed his car in up near the tennis courts. And if a car was approaching speeding, he'd blink the headlights. By the time you get up to him, you would realize it was a police cruiser and slow down. But I understand that the municipality is going to install speed bumps near this gentleman's house. And I hope what doesn't happen in another community when they put speed bumps in and when the motors came along, they laid on the horn. That might not make them very happy either. But I think if we had a little, I don't know if you have your shift supervisor or what, could come and take a look at the situation and maybe have the officers, not all the time, because you don't have that, you have other things to do besides that. But if there was a little radar around, I think this would solve a lot of the problem.
Yes, Doug?
Madam Chair, just for those members of the Police Service Board that may not be familiar, the Mayor's Task Force did present a summary report to Council. I believe it was on April the 20th. On Trent Drive, it is actually rumble strips. It's not speed bumps that will be installed, and they will be installed for the season. They are temporary. They will be lifted for winter. There will also be rumble strips installed over in Hastings. In addition, the Mayor's Task Force made a recommendation to Council, and Council supported the acquisition of movable radar signs that will be distributed throughout the municipality going forward. So we are aware of all those. I know the stuff has been ordered, and will be deployed once we have it. But that report, for anybody who wishes to see it, is in the Council April 20th agenda that lists out all the recommendations that Council supported at this time. Obviously, there could be more going forward as well.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Doug.
Yes, I have read that report. But one thing, just as a comment, they closed the road here for, I think it was 4 days while they poured some cement up at the north end. And you know, people don't pay attention to the signs. You wouldn't believe the number of people that still traveled the road that went up and had to turn around and come back. Some of them were a little cheesed off and come back faster than they went up. But signs don't seem to do it. That's just my own personal observation.
Thank you. Ken, you were going to say something?
Yes, I was, I had looked at the numbers back on Trent Drive, and if my math is correct and it may be close, that over that 10-day period, there was over 10,000 cars went up and down that road. So that's 1,000 cars a day. But if you look at 1,000 cars a day and you look at the over 51 kilometers an hour, that's 432 cars a day that are doing better than 15 kilometers over the speed limit. But that doesn't get reflected in our meter that's on here. But I can certainly understand why some of the people who live on that road are getting upset when you got 400 cars a day who I would say are more than pushing the speed limit. And I just didn't know how that could be addressed, because this formulation doesn't pick it up, but it is quite a bit of speeding that's going on in a residential area with a large number of cars. And I just wanted to make that point.
Good point. Thank you. Any other comments with regards to our Black Cat reports? And does anybody have any suggestions on other locations that could be investigated? Okay, could I have a motion, please, to accept the information?
I'll move.
Ken? And a seconder?
Second. I'll
Thanks,
second.
Joe. Karen, could you call the vote, please?
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Councillor Bratney.
Yes.
That's carried by 5, Madam. Oh, sorry, Kathy, sorry.
Yes, thank you.
That's carried by 5, Madam Chair.
Okay, now we move on to general business. The OPP Detachment Board proposal dated April 2021. I sent out the draft that came from the steering committee to everybody last week after our meeting. I didn't get any comments back. I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign.
Madam Chair, I didn't get it.
Oh, okay. Well, if you click on the proposal, have you got?
Yes,
your-
I've got it up here now.
Yes, okay. I don't understand. I'm gonna have to get your email again then, Eric. Something is wrong.
Yeah, no, I did. I'm seeing it and I read it as part of the agenda.
Okay, no, you should have had it last week when I sent it out. I know Jean didn't get it the first time because I sent it to the wrong email address. And then he got it, but sorry about that.
That's okay. Technology.
I know. Okay, I think that we have certainly discussed this in the past. Does anybody have any further comment on this proposal?
I do. I know there's been discussions. I should have put my hand up earlier and tried to get some history, some background to this. I see this, and I might be looking at it wrong, but I see this as downsizing the Police Services Board at a time where I believe there should be more community involvement and more interaction, not less.
This
I'm
is,
reading.
oh, sorry,
No.
go ahead.
So I just don't understand why we're kind of downsizing when we've got some good representation of the community and working as a community. I just don't understand why we're doing this. I could see this being forced upon us.
Which
I
is
don't-
exactly what's happening
Moving
because
forward.
the new act that's replacing the Police Services Act calls for the creation of detachment boards. And I know one of the numbers that the steering committee used, and I don't know where Dick got it from. They were looking at one board possibly representing 50,000 people. In our case, our detachment board would represent certainly far less than that, but it's legislated. And back in, I guess it was 2017, Northumberland put together a proposal that we originally thought they were only going to allow the boards to have 5 members. And that was very concerning to everyone. So we put together proposals suggesting that we be able to have either 7 or 9 person boards. Our member of Provincial Parliament, David Piccini, we met with him on a couple occasions, and he championed our proposal to the Solicitor General. And while it didn't go any further than that, we really believe that the fact that we did it and put it forward was probably the basis for the latest proposal, which calls for a minimum of 5 members, which is why we are trying to put forward a proposal that calls for 10 members from our board, 1 from each municipality, 2 members at large and 2 provincial appointees, plus 1 member from Alderville, should they choose to participate. So Eric, I think.
No, I just, I don't think that's appropriate. The whole concept of a police services board is proper representation. And I do not support it at all.
Okay, well, I
you're
think you have a compatriot in Joe, because Joe certainly doesn't support it either.
Oh, okay. I really don't, I see us saying no. We're not going to, because we think things are working well the way they are. Now, again, with all due respect, Jeff, is this a proposal to help the OPP spend less time with the boards? Rather, can Jeff just do one meeting rather than 6?
Yes,
Is
that's probably
that
part
the
of it.
reason? And that's where we're losing the interaction. We've, we heard earlier today, the community policing has gone the wayside, and this is also going to the wayside. And, if, and Kathy, from the past, I don't think we do enough interaction with the community.
I know.
And now, if we're going to be down to, one representative out of Trent Hills, then, I just don't agree with it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Doug, you were going to say something.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for the board's information, I believe I did forward the correspondence from the Solicitor General, and when council received that letter from the Solicitor General, they were interested in input from the Trent Hills Police Service Board, but ultimately it will be council's decision regardless what the Police Services Board decides. It will be council making the decision on the representation, but council very much wants the input from the Police Services Board.
Perfect. Thank you. Jeff, would you like to speak to this at all?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Not much for my input. As Kathy mentioned, the working group that's Hamilton's taking the lead on that. I've been invited to 2 of their meetings so far, just as a consultative operational aspect of it. I really don't and can't have an opinion as far as the makeup of the board. I have had conversations with other board members throughout the county, answering a couple of their questions. I want to make it very clear to everybody that regardless of what happens, what the board looks like, that access to me as your detached commander and Mario Roy, our operations manager, does not change at all. I'm very happy to receive emails and phone calls from board members. I do that quite often, from CEOs. I had a very quick turnaround Skype meeting yesterday morning with Tim Blake. Lynn Phillips was going to be on it, but she got called away. And I tell everybody, I have a very busy, full schedule, but always try. And if we can't get together that day, we'll make it as quickly as possible. So I'm just throwing that out there to help maybe alleviate if there's any concerns that there's less accountability of me as your detached commander, Mario and I as the detachment command. You're still talking to us as much as you like, regardless of if it's only one detachment board meeting a month. That doesn't stop any of our other conversations or emails that we have.
Thanks, Jeff.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Jeff, I couldn't agree more. And we've done a lot of things with the hospital and other issues and together. And I agree to support you. And that's you. And I feel very comfortable with yourself and your predecessor. But I don't know who's coming after you. I don't know what their attitude and their ability to replicate your style. So although I'm comfortable, if you can guarantee me that you're going to be there for in that position for the next 30 years, I'm happy. But I'm sorry. I'm just having great difficulty with streamlining a process that's currently legislated and us participating in it when we should be opposing it wholeheartedly. and convincing our council and our representatives to oppose it, and even our provincial representatives to oppose it, because we're losing the entire flavor of a police services board and what we should be doing, and the interaction between the police and between the community. Because this is going to be seen as, okay, we're going to be going into in the States where, you know, there's less accountability to the communities. And I just have great difficulty with it and in it as well. Sorry.
Thanks, Eric. Ken.
Kathy, if
Madam
I
Chair.
could make a,
Oh, sorry, Ken.
Go ahead, Gene.
Well, Madam Chair, I share the frustration that Eric has, and I guess it shows the result of having a majority government. And this is very loud and clear that they don't want volunteers participating in the police business. They also don't want what they've done to the Conservation Act, what the conservation boards were doing to protect natural heritage and stuff like that in Ontario. So as a councillor, we can protest all we like, but Queen's Park has thrown this on the table, and as far as they're concerned, it's a done deal. So you may think the council is soft on this, but the end of the day is that Queen's Park government it's got a majority. They can do what they like, and they have done that. And like it or not, we got to live with it.
Thanks, Jean. Ken?
Kathy,
Sorry?
well, I'm trying to get in there to just give a quick response or a quick statement.
Go
If I
ahead.
may. Okay, I've lived here since 1970 and served on the OPP here. And when I retired in 1993, Campbellford Detachment had around 26 officers. And in addition to Trent Hills, we policed Havelock and Belmont Township. Now, since that time that I retired, Campbellford Detachment, as it existed then, no longer exists. I guess officers work out of there, but I don't know where the supervision comes from. But we had court once a month, criminal court here in Campbellford. We had traffic court once a month here in Campbellford, and I believe we had small claims court once a month. And we see that going down the road to Coburg and Port Hope. And I see where we used to have a health unit officer. It's gone down the road. And I just see everything going down. And I see this fellow from Hamilton Township. I don't know the gentleman, but is pushing this. But I look at Trent Hills. We were very progressive back. Well, I guess I was on council for the first amalgamation of Campbellford and Seymour. And then the next term of council, we amalgamated with Hastings and Percy. And we are bigger, more population than any of these other ones coming in. But the way I read the regulations, part of it, the municipality can opt out. And from my point of view, I don't like to see anything more headed out of the municipality. I would like to see us object to having one police board for what's left of the county. Port Hope and Coburg have their own. Port Hope or Hope Township, I guess, is policed by the OPP under a separate contract. But anyway, that's my feeling. And I have already made it known to MPP Passini. I haven't got a reply back yet. And I think I may send something to the Trent Hills mayor and the council with my objections as to what I see here as my experience of being a police officer here and my experience of being on the council. I don't like this one bit. Anyway, I agree with Eric.
Okay, Ken?
Well, I guess since I'm probably the only one that was on the police service board back in 2017 when all this started, and it was a great shock when we were told at that point there was only going to be a board of 5 and no idea on the composition. And I know a lot of work was done between 2017 in 2019 with a lot of input from all the different boards and letters back and forth before the final documentation was sent to the Solicitor General. So considering what was originally being proposed and where we've ended up now, because we know what the provincial government wants and what is being passed, I support this motion. Not that I like to see something leave town, but like I say, given all the background and conversations we had in the past, I think this is a far better result than what originally was going to happen. So I would say that I don't think there's any way we could justify having a separate police board that I can think of a way to justify it. So I think that this is the way we should be going because of we got a better deal now than we had 2 years ago.
Thanks, Ken. Okay, where do we go from here? I guess I need a motion to accept the information.
Madam Chair, there is a proposed motion on the agenda cover if there are members that are willing to move and second it, which sets out the recommendation to council. And by all means, each board member that votes can vote however they so choose.
Okay. So could I have somebody make the motion and somebody second it, please?
I'll make a motion because we got to have a vote.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Do you have a seconder?
No, it wasn't Joe.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was Joe. It was a Ken, was it?
You can use Joe.
You know,
Okay, Ken.
Yes.
Do we have a
Who
seconder?
seconded, Kathy?
Who's going to be the seconder?
I'll second.
Thanks, Jean. Karen, if you could call the vote, please.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Eric,
No,
Joe,
no,
Councillor Bratney,
Reluctantly, yes.
and Kathy.
Yes,
That's carried by 3, Madam Chair.
thank you. So that proposal will be going to council next week?
Next week, yes.
if I may,
Yes, go ahead.
just to highlight in the minutes at, I think this is the first time since I've been on the board that we haven't had a consensus and the strong views of some of the members. I wish if that could be added to the minutes and highlighted when this goes to the council, please.
It will, sorry, go ahead, Doug.
The procedural bylaws states that the minutes record the decisions. They do not record the discussion. The video
Exactly.
recording of the meeting will be available through our meeting portal. So all those comments and the members' exact words will be there, but they will not be reflected in the minutes. They're without note or comment under the Municipal Act.
If I could just make a suggestion, we do have 2 members of council, and I'm hoping that they can relate and relay the message to council of whole of the difficulty and some of the opinions of the board members.
Certainly.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is communications, and we don't have any. So could I have a motion for adjournment?
I'll make that motion, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Eric.
Seconder.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Ken. Do we need to vote on that?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Eric,
Yes.
Joe,
yes,
Councillor Bratney,
Yes.
Counselor Tully,
Yes.
and Kathy.
Yes.
That's
Thanks,
carried by
everybody.
5 that we adjourn at 11:36 a.m.
Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone.
Inspector.
Bye now.